Hello. Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what part of the world you're joining us from. My name is Sally Deckard, and I am a faculty support and classroom consultant at UAGC. And I'm your host for this session, Fostering Belonging, Students Share Their Experiences. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with other TLC-related materials. Your microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Patty O'Sullivan, who will introduce herself and her panel.
Thank you, Sally. Well, it's a thrill. Well, my name is Patty O'Sullivan. I'm with Every Learner Everywhere. And I just want to say it's a thrill that the University of Arizona Global Campus invited us to their teaching and learning conference. We're so happy to be with you today. We have a great panel of students who are going to share their experiences on sense of belonging. But first, I just want to tell you a little bit about Every Learner Everywhere. We are a nonprofit network of 13 different organizations, and we advocate for equitable outcomes in U.S. higher education through advances in digital learning. We help institutions with professional development. We do coaching. We do free webinars. We have over 300 free resources in our resource library for faculty, administrators, and faculty support staff. So I hope that you get a chance to go to our our website and find our resource library, and I'll post that later so that you can access those. So now I am very happy to introduce our moderator, Braden Hamilton, and she is going to introduce herself to you and the rest of the panel. Just a caveat, Dariana Patterson is not able to join us. She fell ill, so we are a smaller panel today. And I'm going to stop sharing, Braden, and let you take it over.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Braden Hamilton, and I am a political science and music education student at Fisk University. And I am going to be the moderator for today's panel. I'm going to start by having the other panelists introduce themselves. So we here have with us Tessa, and we have Addie. So Tessa, if you can come off mute and introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Tessa Wolf. I am currently a senior at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. My major is Learning and Education Studies with a concentration in Educational Technology, and I've got minors in Informatics and Disability Studies.
Nice. Addie?
Hi, I am Addie Wellborn, and I'm a sophomore at the University of Mississippi.
Nice. So today, as you guys know, the title of the presentation is Fostering Belonging. Students share their experiences. And so we're going to start off by talking about what does belonging mean to us. So I can start off by saying belonging to me really just means to feel welcome and to feel a community. I attend a historically Black university, and it was important for me to understand that, during my collegiate journey and as well as my collegiate preparation, my professional experience, it was important for me to meet people who can relate to me as well as those who can give me advice for situations that we may have in common. So my next question is for Addie, actually, and I want to ask you, how do you think campus culture and um, community impacts students' sense of belonging? And are there any specific initiatives or programs that have made a difference for you?
So I definitely say for like communities on campus that made a difference for me was my ROTC unit, because that was able to foster a lot of belonging, because you have to work together to like be a unit and be a team in the military, and that's what it's training me to do. So, and I would also say like being yourself really helps with belonging, because if you like conform to the group, then you're not going to be able to truly belong if you're not yourself. So it helped me do that too, and overall just be able to work well in a group and had a lot of advantages like that, as well as a lot of other clubs on campus.
Nice. Yeah, I think that, like you said, building community and as well as organizing yourself and putting yourself into activities that'll make you feel comfortable with those who are like-minded is really important. So, Tessa, in your major, are there any specific things that in your department that makes you feel that you belong?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I am in the Department of Education at my school, and I feel like that department in specific is very good at making sure all of the students feel as if they belong. There's a lot of initiatives to uh, like have group meetings, have like sessions to discuss topics within the College of Education, a lot of different like student organizations within that, um, to help people to connect, whether that be socially or academically. So there's just a lot of things that I feel, in particular with my College of Education, that has helped us and me in specific to feel as if I belong.
Yeah. I agree. I think that, in education, specifically, there's so much patience you have to have, as well as like, a lot of teamworking and teamwork skills that are really important for this. The next question I'm going to kind of answer or take over, and I'm going to ask Tessa or Addie for any comments if you feel compelled. But the question is going to be: can you share a specific experience or moment in college where you felt a strong sense of belonging, and what factors contributed to that feeling? For me specifically, the moment where I stepped on campus, Fisk University has a new student orientation week where the fresh new students or freshmen come for an entire week before the rest of campus gets here, and we get to know each other, and we do a lot of professional development activities as well as campus involvement and family oriented uh, gatherings. So that was the moment where I felt really comfortable and really, really welcomed on Fisk campus. They gave me a lot of lessons about how to be one, a student, two, how to, kind of navigate space as a college student. I've, of course, never been to college before, never been so far away from home for such a long period of time. So that initiative to kind of like bring us all together and kind of have upperclassmen or advisors or community collegiate staff kind of like help us and guide us through that experience and build connections and mentorship opportunities through that week was really important to me. Addie or Tessa, do you have a similar experience you'd like to share?
Yeah, I definitely can add on to this. So, I guess my answer to this like topic kind of shares both a moment of feeling belonging and a feeling of not belonging. So I actually initially started at my university as a computer science student. My goal was to be a software engineer, and I was not prepared, especially for the rigor of the University of Illinois' computer science program. Um, like I'd been admitted for it, but I don't think I was at all prepared. And it's such a big and competitive program that I felt that I was just kind of like kicked to the side. I needed a lot more help than my peers, and I wasn't receiving that. And so I definitely felt like I did not belong at all. And it made me have kind of a huge like crisis in my own like time because I felt as though like, well, like no one in my family has ever dropped out of college. Like my older brother graduated or at the time was in a computer science program at the University of Illinois. And so I was like, I felt super lost. And like I was also I was a freshman in 2021. So COVID was still very much a thing and impacting classes. Oh my gosh. And so I was not able to really interact with people. And I ended up switching out of my major after freshman year. Um, and then going into my major, I remember this sense of belonging of like my classes. And I think what it was when I went into my education classes as opposed to my computer science classes, the teachers made, well, first of all, the classes were a lot smaller. So, and they were in person. So I didn't have to worry about like 700 students online. That's very like not personal and a lot more it's difficult to feel like you belong in that setting. Whereas in my education classes, uh, they were a lot more personal, a lot more personalized. The teachers made an effort to get to know every student, get to know their needs, make accommodations, stuff like that. And so I think that that was really what made me feel like I belonged in a major, and it has helped me exponentially throughout my academic pursuits.
Yeah. It's so important that you mentioned that story, and I appreciate you for sharing that with us, Tessa, because that's, it's a really vulnerable topic to talk about, like not being unprepared. As a college student, you're very vulnerable. Don't have much information, or you don't really know what's ahead of you. So it's really important to kind of feel that sense of belonging, as well as that sense of community in a space that you're new to, and that you hope to, professionally be in one day. So thank you for sharing that, Tessa. Addie, do you have anything to share?
I'd say for like belonging, um, when I first like got to campus, like it, I go to an SEC school, and it's just a very sense of um, different environment, and I was not ready for that. I'm from Florida, and I was not ready for like the different kind of culture around like a college town. And it's hard to feel like you belong, especially like when you're in a uniform on campus and like no one else, they're all like looking at you. So like it felt like I didn't belong, but then you like look around and you see a lot of other people wearing the uniform too. And you remember like why you're doing it and like why you feel like you belong in that community, and it made a big difference for me.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. So, Tessa, we can move on to you. How can college faculty foster belonging in their classes for students historically excluded from the disciplines? Kind of like what you were talking about with computer science. Like, how do you feel that college faculty could do a little bit more to make sure that that sense of community as well as belonging is felt inside of their classes as well as inside of their departments?
Yeah, so obviously I can talk about this in the context of like my own I guess historical just like exclusions. So again, like kind of going into that example of computer science, um, and like what I think could have been more helpful to help me feel like I belong is I think just having like making an effort to engage with the students outside of just like the lessons. Whether that be because I know in my university's case, there was nothing they could do about the class sizes. So many people were taking that like intro to computer science class. There's nothing they can do to minimize those class sizes because the students need to take that class. But I think just like offering like a way to interact with the professors, um, noticing are the students struggling? If the students are struggling, reaching out to them, um, trying to like, identify possible students that are just not doing well in the classes. I think also just like with like culturally inclusive education, giving diverse examples in classes. And this is going, I guess, like in a more general, broad way of saying like, just making sure that it's like culturally inclusive within their um, like lessons and curriculums, um, offering like mentorship, like making sure that they like if a student needs help, that they will provide that help. Um, those are kind of the examples that come to mind. But if you guys have anything else to say on that.
No, I was gonna say that I completely agree with what you're saying. The just kind of reaching out is really important. I think my freshman year, I definitely had some professors that were like, like, how's everybody doing? Like, kind of like checking up on us. And I had some professors that was just kind of like, turn in your work. I'll see you at finals. It's about really intent over impact over intent. Sometimes I feel like a lot of people don't really see the value in kind of connecting with your students, which is important, as you mentioned, Tessa. So, my next question is going to be for Addie. So looking ahead, what advice would you give to incomings about finding their place and building connections in their college community?
I would say whenever they give you like a tour of or like tell you all the stuff that they can do on campus, definitely like listen and take that all in, because knowing like what you can do on campus is gonna really foster that sense of belonging, because there's something for everyone, and I really believe that it doesn't matter like what you're interested in. Like if it has to do with your major or not, you can find internships, you can find any club, or you can even make your own. That's one thing that a lot of people do at my school. So that's probably all I would say for advice.
Nice. Um, I agree with you 100%. Those tours are really important, as well as like connecting with people. I believe that doing your research about things is really important. Research doesn't just like doing a quick Google search, like talking to people in person, having like that human to human interaction, as well as talking to people that are doing what you want to do, you know? So thank you for that, Addie. This is a question I'm gonna kind of put on the floor for both of you guys to kind of chime in on. And this one is going to be, does belonging mean to fit into a pre-made group to you, or does it mean being yourself and finding a group that fits you?
I mean, I think for me, it's definitely being myself and finding a group that fits. Um, you know, I think Addie mentioned this before, or maybe you did, I don't remember. But you don't want to conform to like standards that you believe other people will want you to, because then you just start to feel like, I guess, like shut away. I don't know, I'm forgetting the word, but like that's again like tying this into my own personal example with computer science. Um, I very much felt like an outsider. Like I was trying so hard to like fit into this group because I had this idea in my mind of what I wanted out of my like college career, and um after like taking the classes and realizing what exactly I was signing up for and what I was trying to fit in with, it was just not um it made me feel even more excluded. I was like, this is just not the place for me. No one wants to help me. And it made it even harder for me to reach out for help because I was like, they don't want me here. They're trying to kick me out, is what I kind of convinced myself, um, because I didn't fit in. So yeah, I think definitely just in leaning into my own interests and um, seeking out like-minded people, that has helped me feel a much deeper sense of belonging.
I would definitely say like not conforming thing is a big part of it, because if you do conform to the group, then you'll lose any sense of belonging that you felt for like when you got to the campus or anything like that, because there's a reason why you choose your campus. It's because you know that in some way you belong there. You just have to figure out like why that is. So that's like a big thing of it. If you change that, then you're going to forget why you even wanted to go there.
Yeah, facts. I think that, like both of you guys said, Eddie and Tessa, like, like you make your experiences, your experiences don't make you. So I think that having the opportunity to really, find what works for you, as well as like figuring out what your community looks like and being able to go, and find that and make sure that you can foster that community is extremely important. So thank you to both Tessa and Addie for answering those questions. And we do have some questions in the chat that were put here. I'm going to just follow up with those. So we have a question from Sally Deckard that says, were any of the panelists students during the pandemic or had remote classes since? And what did your instructors do or could have they have done to nurture a sense of belonging in their classes?
Yeah, I can definitely start off with this. I think I think I'm the only one that was a college student at the time that like the pandemic was like really heavy hitting. It was Braden, you're a sophomore, right? Yeah, yeah. So I was because I graduated in 2021. I was a freshman in 2021. So that was kind of the year after like the start of the pandemic, but it was still very much like very like little in-person classes, like social distancing, like very, very strict with that. Um, and I have had remote classes since. So for context, like with my major, um, it's obviously a very niche major. You're not going to find it in a lot of other schools. And that is because my major was taken from a grad school program and it is very new at my school. So a lot of my classes are grad school classes, and a lot of the people that are grad students are teachers who aren't like they're online. And so a lot of my classes have been online and at night. So I'm basically in grad school for my undergrad. But it's definitely, difficult to engage with people in those settings. And I feel like my instructors have done a decent amount in those classes to try to nurture a sense of belonging. Those classes are often very discussion based. So making sure that the students are interacting with each other, whether that's in like breakout rooms or having, we use Canvas as our, um, I'm forgetting the term, but we use Canvas at our school for all of our classes. And um, we do this, we have like discussions there. So they do a lot in terms of like trying to make us interact even if we're not seeing each other face to face. Same thing with like project, a lot of the classes are project based. So we'll have like group projects and stuff like that.
Nice. So we have another question in the chat. And then that is from Lisa. And it says, as a student, did you have any live contact with instructors and what value did you find in it?
I can answer this one again. Um, I mean, I have definitely had live contact with instructors, like a lot. I still do have like classes that are in person. Um, and even like I think this ties into another question that's a little bit farther down, but and I can expand on that question a little later. But um obviously, I see them in class, but I also see them out of class, especially professors that have made me feel a deeper sense of belonging within my, like, classroom and experiences, and ones that I've personally related to. And I think there's a lot of value in connecting with professors. I think it helps with belonging a lot. The more connected you are to a professor, the more connected you are to the class, and I feel like that's the more likely that the professor is going to reach out to you in general. Um, Obviously, in a class where you don't have much interaction with the professor, they're not going to know exactly who you are. Um, Most likely, especially in like a bigger class, they're not going to be able to like pick you out of a crowd. And so, just because you're doing poorly, um, they might not even reach out to you, and you'll just have to deal with whatever like grade or repercussions um, that they want you to deal with. But I think also, like interacting with them in person helps to like it singles you out as a student is what it does. It makes them identify like this is a student that I can relate to. I know who this is. And so if I'm ever struggling, it's a lot easier to reach out and it's a lot easier for them to reach out to me.
Nice. So we have another question. And this question is for anyone, Tessa or Addie. Do you have any contact with you? Kind of, Tessa, you already kind of answered this a little bit, but I will put it back out there on the floor. Do you have any contact with your university faculty or staff outside of the classroom setting? And do those relationships make you feel a sense of belonging to your school?
Yeah. Again, oh sorry, Addie, you can go and then I'll talk.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say I definitely. So for RTC, I have to do all in-person classes. I can't do like any online. So I definitely am in contact with teachers inside and outside the classroom for like tutoring, office hours, any kind of help. I'll email. Um, so I feel like you kind of have to be in touch with them, especially if you're in class, because like there's so much that you can't get online for like a lot of like small things with like how they're gonna ask questions on a test or um, how they want you to do certain things. So I think there's a benefit to having that relationship, but then there's also a lot of drawbacks too.
Yeah. I think, again, kind of expanding in my experiences with interacting with faculty and staff outside of the classroom setting, I am pretty involved in my university, especially now with like doing undergraduate research. And in order to have gotten those positions with research, it requires me to have like outside of the class, like if I am really interested in what a professor is doing within their research, just like communicating with them, talking with them. I've got one specific professor who was the very first professor I ever had in like my disability studies courses. And she was the first one who like really introduced me to like the idea of classes can be more accessible than I thought that they ever could be. It She completely changed my entire like college experience, and I still talk to her like it's at a point where we'll go out and get coffee. Like I'm involved in a lot of her research, both as someone who is currently doing the research and also participant. I do a lot of panels in my college for accessibility, and sharing my experience as a disabled student. So there's a lot that I get to do with that, and has made me feel a much deeper sense of belonging to my school. It makes me feel like I have like a purpose almost within my field, being able to interact not only with her as a friend, but also as like a colleague and as like a student in general. So I think having that contact has made me feel like I belong a lot more.
Nice. I agree with both of you guys are saying. Those inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom interactions are super important. I really value office hours because I think that it gives me opportunity to ask questions that I may not feel comfortable asking inside of the classroom. I might want to connect it to something that I feel that is important to me specifically as a, student. There are a lot of classes that I'm taking, for like core classes or classes that I have to take, university requirement that I'm not particularly too happy about. Or I might find interest in. I kind of want to talk to the professor a little bit more about just because it piques my interest. That's the kind of time to do that. So I really appreciate that time. So we have another question here in the chat, and it says, "What other offices, staff members have been most beneficial to you in developing that sense of belonging?"
I can start on this one again. So one of my biggest passions and what I'm kind of basing my entire education around is universal design for learning and accessibility in classrooms. And um, within my field, like I think my major has about 3 people in it in my grade, and it's not very common, and there's not a lot that I get. Like I can't really focus too much on it, and so I have had to do a lot of outreach within my own school in order to um, really get the educational experience that I want, especially within that specific topic. And so um, the office that I think has had like been most beneficial to me in developing my sense of belonging is my school's the Center for Innovation, Teaching, and Learning. So we call it CITL, CITL. And I went there because they had a an undergraduate, like not an undergraduate, and a universal design for learning like task force, which was brand new. And through there, I have been receiving a mentorship. So it's very unlike anything I'd done before in college, because this was strictly for my own benefit. Like I wasn't getting paid, I wasn't getting class credit. Like this was just for me to learn extra. Um, but it has done a lot in terms of helping me feel that I belong within the school, and just like in general, like helping me to have a further understanding of like ways that I can help my community and make everyone else feel like they belong as well.
Nice. And I know you were talking about being in ROTC, and like having the opportunity to, just kind of like be on campus and have that experience, be in person. Do you feel like that experience helped you as a college student or like as an individual? Those mentors in that space kind of contributed to your collegiate journey. How do you feel about that?
I would say they definitely have contributed to my overall education just through like going into college. I definitely want to do like more online because like that's just how it was in high school with some of the pandemic happening. So I was like, okay, online, I know how to do it. It'll be great. But then doing in-person classes, I realized it challenges me a little bit more because I really have to take in what the professor's saying. Because there's not going to be like a recorded lecture on it. You have to take the notes. and like really good office hours if you need to understand something. And I missed how much like actually doing stuff on paper for like math and different stuff like that. It really helps. Like I don't use a calculator for anything anymore for calculus. Like I just do the math myself, and like my teachers for a lot of classes like that have really guided how to get back into like doing things like by yourself and making it independent, and just like a lot of like future life skills that are really going to help me out, I think. So.
Nice. So we have another question here. And it says, what challenges do you see for students in general in terms of belonging? So for example, do you have friends or family who struggle to find their place at their school or in their major?
I can absolutely answer this one. So, I can tie this into myself, but I'm currently so my little brother is a freshman in college at the University of Illinois as well. And I'm seeing it within him as well. And I think that it's the biggest difference in like the sense of belonging is especially like the newness of everything. Um, as Addie had kind of mentioned, like it's a very different society. It's a different culture that you see on a college campus. I think the biggest thing is the fact that everyone feels alone in that. To some degree, it's like we have never, well, most people have never experienced something like college before. Most of the time, people have known the people that they went to high school with for a while before, and so I think like the newness of everything causes a lot of problems within the sense of belonging. But also, there's something to say for like preparation for college. So I think that like my family did prepare me for college to a certain degree. Like I'm go to college at my parents' alma mater, so I kind of knew what to expect a little bit, but I was not prepared at all for my own major. I came from a smaller town in northern Illinois, which was like they had computers, they had AP computer science. I didn't take that until my junior year, and that was when COVID hit. And so I really had no expectation for what computer science in college was going to be like. I didn't have any like I didn't know what being a software engineer looked like. I just knew that they made money and that's what I wanted. And so I decided to apply into that. And then there was this like expectation that I just somehow knew everything, like, and that I was just one of the masses. And that's also how like my little brother's feeling. He's computer engineering here. And he went to a private high school in Northern Illinois, so a different high school than me. And he had a little bit more preparation, but it's still, um, he constantly tells me it's like they just expect me to know everything. And that the expectation that people know everything. And I also saw in the chat, when people are saying, teachers will say like half of you will fail. I feel the same way when teachers will tell you in introductory level classes, this is a weed out class, and I'm like, why are you trying to weed me out? That immediately makes me feel like I don't belong, that you don't want me to belong, because I am disadvantaged in the fact that I didn't have all the resources before coming to college to understand everything. Like I am coming in as a new computer science student, so that was, I think, just such a wild experience for me to have been told like, oh, we don't really, like, you're just not good enough for that. And that caused a lot of problems again in my freshman year of college. And something that I'm like trying to mentor my little brother through right now, where he definitely is sort of feeling that. And I'm like, no, it gets better if you really are passionate about it. So I think definitely not only just like background experiences make students feel like they don't belong, but also just like sometimes the general culture of college can make people feel like they don't belong.
Right. I think that like you were saying, the idea of like having a weed out class, like that was so foreign to me because in high school, obviously you can't be weeded out, you have to graduate. So like, saying the idea that I like this is like I may not be able to continue with something I'm really passionate about just because, what I'm saying, I was behind the curve a little bit about earlier you talked, Tessia, you talked about having like diverse diverse curriculums and diverse examples in the cloud of the classroom. And I'm big on diversity, not just racial diversity or other forms of diversity, as well as like economic diversity. Like I said, I go to a private school, a private historically Black university, and there were still a lot of hurdles that I had to kind of overcome in that space. I kind of grew up like upper to like lower middle class, and my family didn't have neither one of my parents graduated from college, so I wasn't 100% sure how college would operate. I knew that for a fact that I wanted to go and I was going to go. I just didn't know, one, how to get there, and two, how to stay there. Because getting there is hard, but staying there is even harder because you have to figure out how, what do you like about this experience? How can I continue to motivate myself every day to stay here? Because this is an option. College is an option. College is not something that you have to do. It's not for everybody. The simple fact that we are doing it, we can applaud ourselves for that because we're working hard and we're pushing ourselves through it, especially because there's so many things that are just changing nowadays, including artificial intelligence, for example. How is that being included into our curriculums? How are we being punished for things of that nature? Things of that nature. So I have another question that I kind of want to gear towards Addie a little bit, talking about, coming to college and being able to feel comfortable in choosing your campus. I know Addie, you said you were from Florida, and I know you go to Ole Miss. So that's, it's like kind of like a huge jump, not too far away, but, so my question for you is, why did you choose your college? And did belonging here have anything to do with that? And do you feel familiar with your campus now that you've, been there for a little while?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to go out of state. I just felt like when you go out of state, like if there's no way to afford it and like distance yourself from home, it really like pushes you out the door and like forces you to grow up a little bit, which is kind of like something I kind of wanted when I was like picking colleges. I used to live here, like at my campus, so I knew like a little bit about it. Um, but I hadn't been back since I was like 5, so it's not not really the same. But I knew I wanted something different, and it was new, but right away I felt at home because just of the community that is here and all the people that you meet. It just forces you to like either like it or you don't, and if you do, it really just becomes like a home for you. Um, and now it just makes me feel like a second home, and I have everyone here that I need. And I would say, like, to counteract that, if you do go out of state and you find a place and you really don't like it, there's no shame in going back home, because if you going out of state is like a risk, because there's a chance that you're not going to like it even if you just like see the campus. So there's nothing like, affordability is a thing. I'm on a full ride with my ROTC scholarship. That's the only reason I got to go out of state, and I am so grateful for that opportunity. But there's many reasons not to do it, as long as it's just about finding where you belong and what you're comfortable with. But yeah.
Nice. So we have another question here, and I kind of want to give this to both of you guys, but I kind of want Tessa to answer first when we're talking about your experience in high school, from going from AP computer science and even being on COVID to, I mean, even being during, happening during COVID, to coming to college and still being in COVID and that transition and experiencing this. So we'll start with Tessa on this one. What would you tell your senior and high school self to help them feel more at home on their campus?
Yeah, I think that the first piece of advice that I would give, not only myself in high school, like my senior self, but I think anyone who's a senior in high school going to college, is you just gotta like, and I'm saying this in, like, the lightest way that I can, like, I'm trying, but it's you gotta lose your dignity a little bit to like network and outreach. Meeting new people is scary. I am very much an introverted person, and making friends was always very difficult for me, just because I was like too scared to go up to people and meet new people and find a community. I kind of waited for people to come up to me. But I think in particular, like, I go to a public land grant university, one of the largest, like, it's a very large university. And it was very different from any past experiences that I'd ever had. And so I don't think I did enough to really outreach. I did a little bit back when I was in my like when I was in my dorms. I met some people there, but that was more like due to close proximity, I believe. Um, but I think especially just, you know, networking for myself and being myself and finding the things that I am passionate about. I think I guess another thing I would tell my senior in high school self is that I'm still young. Like even now, I'm a senior in college and I've been having more feelings of like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so old. Like I miss my youth, and I'm like, I'm literally 21 years old. Like I am still young. I need to especially tell my 18-year-old self that like, things change and you have to adapt to that and not be super scared of that. If there is something that makes you feel like you don't belong, find something that makes you feel like you belong. There's something wrong. Like you have to identify what is making me feel like I do not belong right now and what can I do to fix that. I think especially again like in a larger university, it is less personalized, and so people aren't going to do that for me. No one can like change what's going on to make me fit in if they don't know that I don't feel like I belong. So I think just in general, um, again, like yeah, the advice is to put yourself out there and that things will change and you have to change with them.
Nice. Addie, do you have anything that you would have any advice you would give to your senior high school self?
Yeah, I would definitely say, senior, I had like so many plans about like the college I was gonna go to, and it was not where I am now. And just be okay with change because that's life, and life will throw you some curveballs. So definitely be okay with change, and even if you have like four different plans, it's okay if none of it goes to any of those plans. Because if what happens is for the best, then that's all that matters. So, because now I know where I belong, and everything worked out the way it was supposed to. So, um, be comfortable with change if you're comfortable with anything, because change will get you to belong. So,
I definitely agree with you there, Addie. When I was in high school, I felt like I was gonna, I really think that I set high expectations for myself, which is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it's okay to be a little bit more realistic and say, like, hey, like it's okay if things just happen how they happen, you know? I was like, I'm a bullet point person, so I'm like, okay, I have to hit this bullet point first, then this bullet point next, and this, and coming into college has, and especially like out of state, like you said, Addie, has definitely got me out of that because everything is not going to go that way. There's going to be some times where I'm going to skip bullet points, and sometimes I won't even make it to others. I remember when I was younger, and I've been saying this on like the internet a whole lot recently, but when I was younger, like teachers used to tell me all the time, like it's okay if you skip a question and come back to it. That's something that kind of sticks with me now. Like you're still going to have to answer the question, but it's okay if you take a break and like reevaluate what you have going on before you revisit that conversation. So we have another question here, and I believe this may be the last question we have here in the chat. But similar to the question about giving advice to your high school self, what would you say to your 31-year-old self? Obviously, we don't know what that's going to look like for us just yet, but and with the plans that you currently have for yourself, as well as the plans that you feel like you're already in the works with, what do you feel like you could say to yourself then, or like even ask yourself, to kind of figure out what's going on in that session of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of want to tie this into the comment that I see underneath it from Vanessa, where like I think when I was a kid, um, I had this idea of what it meant after college. So, like, my parents are both college graduates, and my mom, got her undergraduate, and then she got her master's degree immediately after. I'm basing my like entire career off my mom. She works at faculty development at a community college near me, so I kind of used her as a little bit of a baseline, but like she kind of went directly into her career. I mean, it was very different, like, she kinda jumped around, like, location-wise, but she never really took, like a gap or anything, like, that was her plan, and then my older brother was, a software engineer who, after 4 years of college. Just he got his undergrad and then moved to San Francisco. So he, had that. And that was in my mind, I was like, that's the plan I got to do. Like after college, I got to like go, go, go. Like my original plan was I'm going to get my bachelor's and then like try to get my master's in 1 year and then immediately go for my PhD. Like I was trying to like really stack on degrees. And things keep changing. Even now, like within like the past week, I'm still like changing what it is that I want to do with my future. Maybe I'll take a gap year, maybe I'll go to grad school. I'm still going to apply to them, but like, especially as a senior in high school, understanding that, my life does not have to be what other people tell me my life has to be. It can be what I want it to be. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a gap year. Like that is fine. So I think, I would ask, or even like just like I would hope that my 31-year-old self is in a position where she feels like content with her career. I hope that I will have lived out my 20s to the best of my ability, because you are only young once, and I need to understand that I am still young no matter how old I feel. I think I also would love to just ask, where am I? Like what is my job? Because I could not tell you. That is something that my college did not tell me, is that if I chose this major, they could not tell me what I'm going to do with it. And so I have to figure that out for myself. So I would just like, I would hope that my 31 years old self is happy and feels content with where she is in life.
I would say for like advice for my 31-year-old self would be, I'm contracted for like the Navy, so like I have to go, and like I know what I'm gonna do because I'm kind of contracted to do it. So I would say, like, is it what we thought it would be? Is it harder than we thought it would be? Um, are you a better leader than you were before? What all have you done? Like, I don't know. Because like so far for like some of the training I've done, it's been cool to do different stuff. But I wonder, like 10 years from now, like how would it look? Or did we ever go to war? Like, is that something? Because like you get told all the time now that like that's what I would do. So I don't know, like how would that work? But
Nice. So I do want to thank both Tessa and Addie for coming to doing this panel today. I really appreciate you guys' answers. You guys share so much insight about what it means to belong on a college campus, as well as what it means to belong as a student in a collegiate experience and community. So I want to thank both of you guys for coming and speaking on today's panel. I also want to thank University of Arizona Global Campus for hosting us this panel today, Every Learner as well. And I'm gonna hand it over to Patty or Sally.
Thank you, Braden. I just want to move us, whoops, I'm trying to move us to the next slide. There we go. I just wanted to let everyone know that if they have any follow-up with these three wonderful students, anyone has a job for Tessa in accessibility, you can contact us. Here's our contact information here. We have a newsletter that we'd love for you to subscribe to. Visit our website. Like I mentioned before, we have hundreds of free resources for faculty, administrators, and faculty support staff. Or you can follow us on social media. Sally, back to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the panel. You guys give us great hope in sharing your experiences, and I'm just really, really grateful that I got chosen to do this. And I want to thank everyone in attendance today. As I looked at the list, such great representation from faculty, from student-facing staff, from faculty support. So thank you very, very much for being here and for your participation in the session. I did link the survey in the chat, and you can give an evaluation and also nominate a TLC presentation for conference awards. So thank you all very much. Thank you for being a part of our TLC and enjoy the rest of your day.